What do you mean you don't have hot sauce? This is Texas. We put Tabasco on cornflakes. You can play it safe if you want to, but you gotta risk it to get that biscuit. When it comes to business, you gotta look out for the cookout. That's how we do it in Texas. What do you mean my accent is too southern? Well, we're fixing to get it on Solve for X. Welcome to Solve for X, the podcast where curiosity meets collaboration. I'm Dr. Rick Fernandez, your host on this journey into the heart of education and innovation. Welcome back to Solve for X, where we're solving for K-12's most complex problems. I have a special guest, Tatiana Ciccarelli from Edmentum, and she is the Director of National Solutions. Tatiana, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me.
It only took me like 5 times to get the intro down, so, but anybody that's ever been on the show with me is well aware of that. So I'm
not doing you any favors with having the longest name in creation.
No,
so you're
Oh, I didn't even get to your name. I screwed it up like 17 times before we even got to that point. So, no, thank you for being here. And we're gonna bat around a little career in tech because that's my thing, and I learned that that's your thing. But before we do that, I'm curious to know a little bit about your own personal journey. So, if you tell me a little bit about your educational background, and then eventually how'd you land at Edmentum?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting question because I was today years old when I realized that anyone who goes into education has had the longest experience in CTE ever. You were a student your whole life. You were observing teachers your whole life, interacting with them, sitting at their desk, looking at their grade book. So I have been in education or adjacent to education since I was a kid. So I have no excuse to not be great at it. I come from a long line of principals and teachers, and so it was sort of the family biz in a weird way. And I was actually reflecting on it today that had it not been for conversations that I had with my father, who was so ahead of the curve, I think, with preparing me with financial literacy and taking a look at what my future was going to be and making sure that I was employable, that I kind of went into the education route very well prepared and also eyes open. So right out of college, I was hired, and I was just so grateful to be hired. And I went right into a math 6th and 7th grade bridge class for special education. So it was trial by fire, and I never left. I stayed in middle school for over 10 years. I stayed in special education for the entirety of my time in the classroom, and I absolutely loved it. I was thinking about going the district leadership principal route. And then, as we know, in 2019 and 2020, the world sort of stopped. And then I sidestepped into edtech. And then a few years later, I found myself at Edmentum as National Solutions Director. So I have been in education my whole life.
So talk about, because we have similar tracks, and I had to make a decision to kind of break from what I thought would be my career path for my entire career. Talk a little bit about that decision going from in the classroom to kind of adjacent, helping schools and districts solve problems.
Yeah, scary. And sometimes you have to have faith that the road will rise to meet you, essentially. But I just saw the writing on the wall that I thought at the time there was a shift happening. Obviously, there was a shift happening culturally and societally in the country. And I just wanted to affect change in a different way. I felt very comfortable with leaving the classroom. I think first and foremost, for any teacher who's looking to leave the classroom, you have to be ready and 100% committed. You can't look back and wonder if it was the right decision. I felt like I had accomplished all of the things. I was a Big Apple Award finalist in New York City. I had many feathers in my cap and felt very confident in my resume. And so I just knew that the timing was right. Also, I could see that we were all heading into this remote workforce, and I felt that that was sort of the trend and where, the next few years were going to take us. And so a job opportunity at a different tech company landed in my lap, and I took it, and it took me out of the classroom and into a completely different sector of the field. But I'm very happy that I made that decision.
What was the first big aha that you noticed between working in the public sector versus working in the private sector?
Oh, the first big aha? I think the first big aha was I left the bubble, and I'm reticent to call New York City a bubble because if it's a bubble, it's the biggest bubble. Yeah. But I left the bubble of New York City and realized that we had very similar problems, obstacles, solutions, and asks nationally. And I worried that my skills in New York City were not going to be transferable to rural towns and counties across America, but they are. At the end of the day, especially coming out of COVID, everybody really wanted a clear path forward. And so regardless if I was in the classroom affecting change or now working on a more national stage, we have more in common than we have different. And so that was my first big like, oh, I can do this because I have the skills that are transferable from classroom, to national.
Awesome. So, I think you handled it. It seems like you handled it way better than I did. I was like having a little bit of a conundrum of, all right, I've been in education for 20 years, and all of a sudden I'm going to take a big step. And then, like you said, hope that it pans out, or hope that my skill set transfers, because you don't really know until like you're in the work and you can get a sense of, all right, yes, this makes total sense. And one of the best moves I've made, and I love everything about working with school districts across the country. And speaking of that, like obviously Edmentum has been a stalwart provider of solutions to school districts and support to teachers. But for those that may not know, can you give us like a 30,000 foot view of Edmentum and all of the supports that y'all provide teachers in schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working for Edmentum because first and foremost, we are educator first. So we keep the educator in the driver's seat. We're always checking in with our teachers who are on the front lines and making sure that what we are providing jives with their needs first. It's very easy, especially in this kind of like edu-corporate world that we live in right now, to make, the larger change makers, I want to say, kind of happy. But at the end of the day, our teachers have to feel that they're supported by the solutions we're providing. And so I love the fact that Edmentum is always putting the educator first. We are an educator company. We're all former educators. You're never really a former educator. I have to say that also. You're just like a transitioned educator. But what we do is basically end-to-end support for all students, depending on if it's credit recovery, if it's career technical education, supplemental resources, adaptive diagnostic assessments, you name it, we do it. So I like that we have a solution for all. It's not a one size fits all sort of a platform. It's a solution for all organization where we work very closely with schools up to large districts, up to at the state level to find the, ease of use and pathway forward in partnership.
Excellent. Now, I'd like to jump into CTE. I know you're in the work. What are some of the trends that you're seeing, hearing, or experiencing as you work with districts across the country?
Yeah, Rick, I can talk about this forever. I just came out of Excel and Ed feeling so, invigorated to kind of pound the pavement and sing the good word of career technical ed. But I'm seeing that, over 40 states now have adopted at the state level some sort of a portrait of a graduate or college and career readiness expectation framework. And so the time is now for us to become the best partner, not only at the instructional level, but also in thinking about who are our students as citizens. So it's not just the content of the skill that I know is important, right? So if we want students to, for example, go into education, they need to be provided with certain amount of exploration in the field of education, because there's a lot of variability in the field of education. You don't just have to be a teacher. You can be a school support aide. You can be a guidance counselor. But also, I love that we are coming back to these durable skills. And even beyond durable skills, when we talk about, being ready to go on an interview or prepare your resume, but durable skills such as financial literacy, foundational numeracy, just a bit of grit and resilience, those things are coming back into the conversation. I think we're going to start to see expectations for our students come back up to a level where I feel they should be and where they can meet them. But also just thinking about the student holistically as a citizen, and what skills they will need to not only thrive in their chosen career path, but also, as you and I know, you need certain skills to be able to pivot as well. So that is part of the conversation right now. And I'm really excited because it's how I became a teacher, and it's how I felt the confidence in myself to be able to pivot in my own career. And students, I think, need to have that embedded as they go through their trajectory on their path.
I really couldn't agree more. Just thinking about this generation of workforce and the likelihood that they'll be in jobs for like 10 years, the same job, 20 years, or retiring from the same company that they started with is very, very unlikely. It's more, I would say that they have a better chance of jumping around probably 10 or 15 jobs within the course of their career. And it could be in a number of different market sectors, right? So
like you said, those durable skills will be critical as they kind of move through the economy. And as you know, I mean, AI is evolving everything. So those skills will even become more of a premium, I think, for some of our companies, some of our big players in the market. You know, do you get the sense, and this is kind of my experience and belief about CTE, that we need to be rebranding it in some ways? And what I mean by that is the thought that everybody had to go to college. That's what was, you know, indoctrinated within me as a student, and what I said to students a large part of my career. But that is really not the case any longer. Yet the perception of CTE has been, well, it's for students that are not going to college, or it's for those types of students. Do you think we should be looking at, all right, maybe it's time that we refresh and try to rebrand and think differently about those classes?
Absolutely. And I'm always trying to find a way to talk about it where it sounds a little bit more appealing, because CTE, CCL, you know, career readiness always kinds of sounds a little like edu jargon heavy. I think we need to reverse engineer the conversation a little bit. So a lot of the conversation that our guidance counselors are having with high school level students is around what school you want to go to. Right. And a lot of students get caught up in the flash, right? And the Greek life or whatever it is. But then they get to the school and then they're like, oh, and now I have to choose a path. That's the wrong way to go about it. We should actually have conversations with students about, where do you see yourself beyond college? You know how much it will cost to get you there? Do you know how much how much debt you will have when you graduate college? And then I think those conversations should inform the school choice, not the other way around. Because right now we're sending students out into college and they're completely unprepared for the reality that, oh, now I have to decide what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm kind of grown up. And I didn't realize that I was going to be $200,000 in debt and only be making $45,000 a year when I graduate and get hired. So I think that if we can find a way to make the financial part of this a little bit more attractive for our students and kind of wrap it in or frame it in that type of a conversation. This is how much money your career will make you. This is how much money your school will cost you to go to. I think that that's where we'll start to have more meaningful conversations, and it'll kind of find its way out of the margins or the vocational track or whatever it is, and actually be more about just life readiness, like life readiness classes. I think a lot about the conversations I had with my father, and we talked a lot about student loans. You could go to a $50,000 a year school and take out loans or whatever it might be. But if you're going into education, odds are you're not going to be making a ton of money when you graduate. So, you have to have return on investment. Yeah. I remember learning about return on investment when I was 16 years old. I don't know if a lot of students have the opportunity to have these conversations with their parents. So we have to bring these conversations into the classroom as early as possible in a way that doesn't frighten students, but is educating them on what is out there beyond all the fun of those 4 years spent at college or university.
It sounds like Dad wanted to make sure at some point you were off the payroll. Is that how that conversation?
He would talk a lot about benefits. He'd say, you're going to have benefits. And I was like, Dad, I don't even get sick that often. What are you talking about? What do I get benefits for? Yeah. And yet, I have to tell you that being employed at 21 years old and having health benefits and having a pension, I became financially literate very quickly. And I think that even 2021 is probably too late. We can be having conversations with students easily as early as middle school.
No doubt. Some of the misalignment, I think, is when we as adults look at something that we think is going to be a compelling choice or interest for students, they don't receive it so well. And I feel like there's an abundance of programs where there's zero interest. And one of the things that we probably should think about a little bit better is, how do we sell this to a student? How would we get them interested? Because, and I always use this example, HVAC, right? We have spent a lot of money across Texas putting in HVAC programming because it is a skill that we definitely need. And students can earn a high wage right out of high school. And yet those enrollments are floundering. Should we consider like, all right, how do we sell this to a student that may or may not be within our generation and may not have the same context as value, right? Should we be thinking about that a little bit differently before we add programming?
Absolutely. I think that safe to assume, I think that you and I are probably in the same generation. And so
I don't, we'll say yes,
I think we are. I think that we have or had an understanding of certain types of systems that take place in cities, in infrastructure, that maybe students in this generation and even, students who are in early elementary now might not have, just because of the culture that they're growing up in, the society that they're growing up in. I was raised in New York City. I was very keen and interested in the way buildings were constructed, though I have family members who were in construction and development. And so it was always a robust, diverse conversation at the dinner table. Can't guarantee that that's happening now. So how do we make something like automotive, mechanic, or when some cars are self-driving already, or that seem appealing to students that have absolutely no cultural relevance to that in their current life? I think that's really important. I think one way that we do that is we have to get students out into the community. We have to get the community into the school. I think that we need to partner with local businesses, local unions, to make sense for students who might not have the access to these conversations. I remember going into the boiler room of the school that I worked in and being so impressed. It was by accident. I took the wrong way. I will say it was by accident. It was very scary at first. I took the elevator the wrong way. But I remember getting down there and thinking to myself, I had such more respect for the people who were working behind the scenes in my school to keep my school running, to keep the heat on, to keep the lights on. It was an undertaking that I had absolutely no awareness of as an adult had I not stumbled upon the basement, And so I think that we have to find ways to bring the conversation into the classroom or bring the outside world into the classroom. And then also, there are still going to be students whose parents do this. Mm-hmm. It's not going away. And what I want to do is I want to also find ways and create conversations where parents still see what they do for a living as relevant and valuable in conversation with their kids. My mother is in sales. My father was in education. I now live at the crossroads of sales and education. It's ironic how it all happened. But if you are a father or mother who owns a plumbing company, don't come home and assume that what you do isn't interesting to your kids. It probably is on some level, and they want to be engaged. And so it's our job, the whole thing about taking a village, but it is our job to create as much awareness as possible. Bringing things into the fold like trade prep and VR prep, I think, is really important as well. That's something that we do. We partner with Interplay to bring the experience to the student, because if they just can't get out there and have the experience, but they know inherently they're not college bound, then they're definitely certification bound, union bound, and employable.
Yeah, that you bring up a great point. And a lot of the internships that I help district structure, a lot of it is virtual because, having the experience as an administrator in a school district, what the barriers are going to be for a student, right? Like it's going to be the transportation. It's going to be, can we do it within the school day? Can we find all of the ways to get this done rather than thinking about all the logistical issues? And, most companies that I work with or have a relationship with, they prefer it virtually as well, because most of the content and the experience and listening in on the meetings, whether it be sales or entrepreneurship or what have you, can be done in a way that's still highly valuable. And now there are all those one-offs that absolutely there's got to be some hands-on, and we can structure them along the way, but it doesn't have, I think we get bogged down with the logistical of being on site every day to make
Correct.
These work. Do you think there's an avenue that maybe we should explore more in terms of that virtual internship and making it just highly accessible to both entities, the student and the company?
I think that's a no-brainer because it's speaking the language that our students currently speak. Our students are the most digitally savvy virtual generation, I think, now than we've ever had. And so bringing something like VR into the classroom, while it might seem foreign to us as dinosaurs, it's not foreign to them. And it's something that they would probably embrace or take to very quickly. that's why, as I mentioned, our partnership with Interplay is great because you can actually manipulate the tools on an electrical switchboard. You can manipulate the tools within an HVAC system. It costs a lot of money to build an actual HVAC facility in a school. I did not know that there were so many, idiosyncrasies when it came to this system. But now think about just having the goggles for students. I mean, that's a totally different experience, a totally different type of a budget that a school would have to have. And so I think that when we think about technology and the way that it can help us, everyone is afraid that technology is going to take over the world and the robots are going to come and then that's going to be it. And I think we're not there. I don't think we're there yet. But I do think there are ways that we can work smarter, not harder with technology. And that's definitely one of the ways we should be tapping into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we're a ways away from my children ask, can we get a robot and can they clean my room and do my chores? I'm like, first of all, we're not there yet. Second of all,
no.
First of all, they'll be cleaning my stuff up before they come up to your room. I'll just tell you that right now. So you're gonna have to save up and get your own robot or what have you. So it's just the era of where do we go next? It feels like everybody's a little bit unsure. And part of the issue also, I think on the education side, and I'd want your take on this, we don't always articulate the ROI for our business partners. I feel like we ask, can you provide this? Can you sponsor this? But in terms of what we're going to provide or the experiences that they can have or the pipeline that we're going to build, I don't think we do a great job with that. Is there anything, now that you sit on both sides and have experience in both sides, how do we do that better? Is there anything that you would recommend in terms of a school district saying this is the value of partnering with us and helping our students get certified?
I love this idea because I just came from Excel and Ed, and there are a few states that are already a little bit ahead of the curve with bringing in local chambers of commerce and local businesses into the school conversation and helping them drive the CTE need. Because students want to see that they can be immediately employable in their home community, right? They don't have to go outside of their community to find, prosperous employment. I think that the first obstacle to that, and I say yes to all, but the first obstacle to that is it's hard to sell having a 16-year-old, kind of partner up with a corporation or a company, right? I think that most people are a little reluctant based on age to bring these students into the workplace because they feel like, is this going to be worthwhile? Am I going to be babysitting this student? Right. I think the first thing we have to do is kind of get them to see beyond that. Yes, they are a teenager or, they're a junior or senior in high school, whatever it might be. They're not going to be your, they're going to be your greenest employee and they're going to need a little bit of hand holding. But if you can create the structure where they can learn and feel that they have a place in your organization, then you have something that a lot of companies don't have, is that you have a champion for your line of work well before they have to make a decision as to where they're going to go beyond 12, right? And so if we can frame it in that it's an investment in your investment, right? You're investing in your investment. It might seem strange and uncomfortable in the beginning, but if on that graduation day, instead of a student signing an acceptance letter for college, they're signing a commitment letter to a company and they're getting a paycheck in 2 weeks. I mean, and it's not only that the student feels that they've accomplished something, but now the organization or the company or the corporation has a ready-to-go employee that has youth on their side and curiosity on their side. I think that that's where the conversation has to be had. It's investing in your future as an organization. It might take you a little bit to get these students up and ready and where they need to go because they're just kids. But one day they're not going to be just a kid. They're going to be a high school graduate ready to make a decision. And imagine the power and the impact of being immediately employable with a company you already have a rapport with, some history with, and some understanding of what they do.
I think it's a huge win. I think also the businesses could tout their ability to grow their own from an early age and talk about, not only recruiting other like-minded individuals to your organization, but just the power that could really put back into a community, I think, is huge. All right, we're kind of coming towards the end. I want to get your take on a couple of things, just like a little rapid fire, if you will. And
Sure.
you can tell me it's a stupid idea or not. Plenty of people have, so don't worry. So being on both sides, right, public and private, are we not leveraging our providers as districts like we should? So if you just think about all of the contracting, all of the supports and partners that a district needs to function well, right? Whether it's construction, whether it's edtech, whether it's food services, it's a lot of money being leveraged to make schools run well. And shouldn't we be asking those folks first of like, hey, this $275 million construction project that you're about to work on for our high school? It'd be nice if we had a couple of interns in our construction or our, you name it, to be a part of that project. Is there a way that we could funnel that in? So I guess the question is, can we leverage the partners that we already have to build rather quickly some internships for our students?
I agree with you. I think that we should be having these kinds of conversations. One of the things I enjoy the most about being a national solutions director is that I get to come in and have that conversation with large districts and states to take I want to say even higher than 30,000 foot view at all of their systems and make sure that there is cohesion and efficiency. We're at a time now in education where we have to do more with less. And districts just don't have the luxury of spending, we don't have COVID funds anymore. They don't have the luxury of spending money without having some sort of an accountability or, a never-ending stream of funds. We have to be very careful with how we're spending our money. So it's really a matter of how can we already employ or empower what is available in the community to kind of create the holistic ecosystem that functions at a high level of efficiency, rather than wastefully spending and chasing down contracts and throwing money at problems rather than looking inward first. And so I like that I get to partner. First and foremost, I'm about relationships and I'm about thought partnership. I love that part of my job and my role, because there is probably a better way. I think now we're realizing that we have to look in order to expand. There's a saying, if you ever practice yoga, root to rise. And so I think sometimes, especially now in this current climate, we have to look inward, and the community with the district can maximize from its community first. Get those parents involved, get those families involved, get local business involved, get the students inspired without having to go find it elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I'm 1 for 1. Let me. I'll take it. Okay, so the next, not idea, but what I see or what I believe, I would say a lot of our colleagues in EdTech are really worried about some of the things you just talked about, like the really tight budgets. I know in Texas, they're tighter than they've ever been. A lot of school districts are in consolidation. And so the thought is, well, districts aren't going to spend on providers and solutions and partnerships quite like they used to because they don't have it. My belief is that's absolutely not the case, because districts don't have the staff that they need. They don't have the resources. And so they're going to have to rely on support from their trusted partners more than ever to get some of this work done for students. So I believe that it will be some really focused purchases, but I don't necessarily agree that it's just, all right, well, nobody's spending on anything. I think we got to find what makes the most sense and who do we trust to do this work. And how do we guarantee outcomes based on our spend? Is that what kind of sense are you getting from some of your relationships about the budgets versus staying with a trusted partner?
I think that you have to be in the middle of those two ideas. Okay. I think that it is a very real problem we are facing right now is the cliff. We're all heading toward a cliff and we just don't know when it's going to happen. And so I think the conservative spending is a real thing. But I think that gives districts and states an opportunity to be creative. I don't see it as necessarily a challenge. I see it as an opportunity for you to really interrogate your systems and your solutions and your partnerships. I like working for Edmentum because we are a flexible partner, meaning we can work with you in one solution. We can be your end-to-end solution provider. And because we are digital, we are very flexible. If you think about being a consumer, right? Do you go to one shopping center for each individual errand that you have to run? Or do you go to the shopping center that has your Target, your supermarket, your dry cleaner, your pet store, whatever it might be? So when we're thinking about it from a consumer lens, we want to go to what is reliable, convenient, efficient, and proven. And so that is one of the things that I think Edmentum does really well, especially with our career technical education, but all of our solutions. We are not just I want to say a transactional partner. We are a relational partnership, meaning you come to us with what you have or what you think, and we're happy to find a way to make it work for you.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's where everybody's trying to find what's the sweet spot of the finance versus we need help. We need support more than ever because we just don't have the staff. So I would agree there. Okay. Last question. Who in your family has the best financial business mindset? If you had to say
the best financial,
because I've heard you mention dad a couple times, but so now I'm curious, but like family, like who's like, if you had to put somebody at CEO, who's going to be the CEO?
If I don't say my mom, she will kill me. She is an accountant. She has an accounting degree. She's a real estate broker. She's a human calculator. But more importantly, she taught me the importance of credit. She taught me the importance of having a nest egg, of diversifying my portfolio. So I'd have to say that if our family was a company, not only have we very much invested in CTE in our family because we're all educators, but she would be the CEO of our family, or maybe she'd be the chief revenue officer. I don't know, because she stands to gain a lot out of, her children being independently successful. So we'll see. She was very smart. My parents are very smart.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, no, I understand. You got to make sure you say the right thing in that moment.
We just Thanksgiving week. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers. No pun intended.
You'll be at the Whataburger line because you didn't get the invite. Like that one person, just like, give me the chicken sandwich, closest thing I can get to Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time and talking shop, particularly on workforce. I truly enjoyed it, and I do want you to come back because obviously this conversation is going to evolve, and what in 2026 will look totally different, I think, than 2025, and so there'll be a whole nother realm of topics we can dive into. But thank you for your time, and thank you for being a guest on Solve for X.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Solve for X. Please follow, like, and subscribe for more episodes. And until next time, keep asking the right questions and solving for X.